The assessment task is in Studentweb, it's under the Assessment Task 1 AutoCAD workshop. The amount of resources is relatively limited because honestly, we don't need that many resources to complete this assignment. Really, there's 2 or 3. We have the Assessment Task 1 AutoCAD workshop, the assessment brief. We then have the example set of drawings that we're going to complete, that we're going to reference. And the third file is the AutoCAD template file. So I'm going to click on each of these and download them, and then we'll look at these one by one, starting with the actual assessment task brief. The assessment task brief is basically the same as the standard cover sheet at Box Hill for all your classes and assessments, and in particular mine are structured in a consistent manner across the 4 assessments. So let's go through this sheet one by one, but we won't touch on every single point, we'll just touch on the most important. However, of course, I'd encourage you to download the file and review it. So going through the most important components, we have the assessment tasks number 1, the AutoCAD workshop. Second thing is it's due on the 24th of the 3rd, which I believe is the last class of this term. So there's plenty of time to complete this. My feedback for your results will go in here, and I will submit that back to you digitally. So I'll drop it in the Dropbox, return to you. The other instructions to take note of is time allowed, so 6 weeks or 42 days to complete this assessment. So it's rather generous. I imagine that some of you students will be able to get through this relatively quickly, but even if not, it's structured in such a way that even the absolute novice will have plenty of time to complete the assessment task. It's an individual assignment. There's no need to work with other people or a team. I'm more than happy for you to discuss and talk to each other and share resources, but the assessments are to be completed on an individual basis. The actual context of the assessment, so the real crux of it, students are to recreate the given example of workshop drawings using Autodesk AutoCAD. Students are to demonstrate learned techniques, workflows, commands taught within class. Pretty self-explanatory. We take the example set of drawings, which we'll go through shortly, and you're essentially directed to recreate them within AutoCAD. What you actually submit, so at the end of this assignment, you'll submit in the Dropbox an AutoCAD DWG file, drawing file, a digital combined PDF of the final drawing set, and if we happen to be back on campus, I also want a physical print on A3 paper of the final drawing set. However, this one may not be required if we're not yet back on campus. You'll submit your assignment via the relevant Dropbox on Studentweb. And again, how to present your work? Well, again, you present your work basically the way that the example is. I'm not asking you to recreate anything in an individualized manner. It's essentially see the example, recreate the example in AutoCAD. You're given 1 attempt for this assignment. However, if it's not deemed satisfactory, there is an opportunity to resubmit and amend your work, but it has to be within 2 weeks of the original assessment task. And the naming protocol for the file. So again, if there is one thing that I am particularly OCD about is file naming. So when uploading your files to Studentweb, the structure will be the assessment task abbreviation dash student initials dash student ID. So example would be assessment task 1 AT1 dash PM dash and then a student number. The assessment will be judged or will be assessed on a observation checklist. You're given an exemplar and via a rubric. So as we scroll down, we can see here is the grading rubric or grading matrix. And it's essentially broken up by sheet. So we can see on the left-hand side, the first column, we've got each cover page, we've got each sheet, cover page, floor plans, elevations and sections, details, window schedule. And then some of this information within repeats per sheet because, for instance, your line weights or drawing accuracy on floor plans may be far better compared to, say, your details or vice versa. And then it's simply graded from excellent to poor. We also have other components such as making sure you create and combine the PDFs. That's a big one. Actually creating and, not so much creating them, but combining the PDFs into one document rather than 3 or 4 individual sheets. uploading them to the Dropbox, and of course printing. Now, however, you won't be graded on this if we are not back on campus, and of course then you cannot print. So the reference documentation is exactly that. It's an exact reference of what you'll create for the final component or the final deliverable of the assessment. So if at any point you're wondering what should I draw next, or am I missing something, or what line thickness does this look like, or whereabouts is this section cut, it's all here. This is exactly what you're to recreate. And so let's go through these page by page. It's broken up into 4 sheets, a very, very small set of drawings. So the first drawing, or the first sheet, is the general notes. This is a typical set of notations that come from the National Construction Code, or the Building Code of Australia, Volume 2, which is the residential construction volume. And it's a pretty simple set of building notes that are usually associated with domestic buildings. That are stamped on there that stipulate, standard codes and stipulations for the builder. The second sheet is set up into 3 different drawings. So we have the floor plan at a scale of 1 to 50, a section at 1 to 50, and 4 elevations at a scale of 1 to 100. The third page are 3 details, and these are called out from the section. We can see that. So we can see here on the section we have 1 detail here, 1 at the roof ridge, and 1 for the footing, and they reflect what we're seeing here. And the final page is what's known as a door and window schedule, which essentially just isolate an elevation of a door and of a window and denote some details about those 2 items. We'll then fill out the title block, we'll annotate, and the drawing set will be complete. It's relatively quick once you get going. It's really just a matter of knowing the platform, that being AutoCAD, more so than the drawing. The drawing itself is not complex. It's really just understanding how to draw it within AutoCAD. And so what we're going to start with today, we're actually going to start on sheet 2, and in particular the floor plan, and just get our basis going there. So we're going to cover guidelines, how to create guidelines, sketch guides. We'll then draw the walls using the polyline system that we went through in our introduction last week. We'll then draw the roof dash, which is this dash line here, which denotes the overhang of the roof. And then we'll then draw the windows and the doors, and we'll do this on the correct layers. And what we'll do is we'll actually turn these into blocks, which, if you go back to the presentation from our first class last week, is basically a named group of objects that we can use to duplicate around a drawing multiple times. So let's take this then now into AutoCAD, where we'll open up the Assessment Task 1 template under Assessment Task 1 in Studentweb, and we'll get started. When you open up the Assessment Task 1 template, as you'll remember, it opens up to Paperspace, which currently is showing the blank cover sheet with nothing on it. I'm going to navigate to the modeling view, and we'll get started. So for reference, what I've got on another tab, another file that's open, is essentially where we want to get to at the end of today's class, or what I would like you to have completed by the next class. This is pretty simple and won't take you very long to document it all. I'm going to go through this at a relatively rapid rate, so of course feel free to pause and repeat where required, but a lot of the commands I'm going to go through briefly, because I'm going to assume that you've completed the evidence of participation and you've watched last week's class recording where I go through some of these commands in greater detail. So let's start off with just double checking our snaps. So I'm going to go down to snaps, just make sure basically everything is turned on except for nearest and node. I don't want either of those turned on. The rest of them I'm happy to have snapped on. In terms of polar tracking, I'm going to click the little down arrow, just double check. Mine's set at 15-degree increments, and again, that's fine. I'm going to go back to the Home tab, and I'm going to open up my Layers Manager. And the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to create a new layer. First cab off the rank. So in the Layer Properties Manager, you'll see about fourth icon from the left. there's this little icon here, which as you hover your mouse over will tell you it's to create a new layer. It looks like a layer with a little sun. Click on that and then it will generate a new layer, which by default is called layer 1. And we are going to call this guidelines. Okay, actually, you know what? Let's use Revit language. Let's call it reference planes. This will make sense when we get into Revit much later on. I'll try and simplify or streamline the language as much as possible between AutoCAD and Revit. So once we're happy with that, hit enter on the keyboard and let's just edit this layer. So the name, reference planes, done. The color, I'm going to click on here and let's make this a magenta. Click OK. The line type is continuous and the line weight, let's click on that and let's say it's 0.05. Mostly because we're not going to ever print this layer anyway. It's just for our reference here. Double click on that layer and we get the green tick. We can now see that is our current layer and we can see that up the top as well in the ribbon. Reference planes is our current layer. All right. Next up, we want to start drawing from the 0 point. Because this AutoCAD file has nothing in it, we have no idea where in space we are. We could be, you know, somewhere in Europe or we could be somewhere in Australia, because this blue space is quite literally the same coordinate system as the world. So to begin, I'm going to draw a line. So L for line, enter, and then I'm going to type into the keyboard 0, 0, 0. And you can see that in the command bar at the bottom. Specify your first point, and the first point is at 0, 0, 0. So in other words, it is smack bang at the beginning of this drawing or the middle of this drawing, or what is known as the origin of this drawing. Hit enter and you'll see that essentially it looks like the line is coming from some other location on the page, but as soon as you zoom out, you'll see it's coming from where the X and Y meet. So I'm just going to draw up, and I might just draw up, I don't know, maybe 5 meters, 5,000, enter. Hit escape, and we're now done. So you can see that 5 meters, when I was zoomed out really far, appears really big until you actually click on it, and then you see how small it is. So now at least we have some sort of sense of scale that is 5 meters tall, that line, or 5 meters long. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the AutoCAD, the example. So when we look at the example here, we can essentially reference back and forward, or in fact, I might bring up the PDF. So here's the PDF. We can go back and forward. So to begin with, what we're doing is we're actually drawing this wall here. We draw that as like a pink line. It's a bit wonky. Let's try that again. So we want pink line there. Then we'll offset that. And we'll offset it basically the distance of the building. And we know what that distance is because it's here, 4.6 meters. So then we'll offset it over there. And then we'll do the same the other way. We'll draw a line this way and then we'll offset it 3.7 meters this way. This gives us the first guides. Then what we'll do is, taking the dimensions on the PDF, we'll start offsetting more guides for our openings. So the opening for the door, opening for the window. And we might rationalize some of this as well, because I'm not 100% sure how correct some of these dimensions are. But look, we'll work with me. We'll get through it. Okay, so back to AutoCAD. So let's click on that. And actually, it was 4.6, wasn't it? Yep, 4.6, 3.7. I take this, offset, enter, 4,600, enter this side, done. And let's go again. So line, and I'm going to start from this point, 0, 0, and just draw this way. I don't care how big. It's a sketch line. It's meant to be over exaggerated. And then we'll offset this one, 3,700 upwards. Okay, so we already have the basis of our building starting from this corner, from the 0, 0 point. All right, and now back to CAD. Just get rid of some of these lines. So 300, just the door opening. Then it will actually be slightly bigger because the way that the door is drawn, the way that you draw doors correctly. Let me just lower the pen weight. So the distance from this point to this point, this is 820. So when you see a door size, even when you go to Bunnings and you'll see 720, 820, 920, etc., that's referring to what is known as the door leaf, which is this component here. That is the bit that actually you grab onto and you open. The door frame, which is denoted by these two rectangles, they are a separate size. So when you dimension an opening, you're going from literally the wall opening to the wall, from wall to wall of the opening. Doors are dimensioned, they can be dimensioned architecturally both ways. So I've seen them dimensioned where you dimension just the door leaf, and then other times where you will dimension the door frame as well when you're doing openings. Again, it's really much of a muchness. This is going to occur very commonly throughout the class, where there'll be some way that we document here, and perhaps in another class, such as your working drawings class with Jackson, he'll ask you or teach you to document in a different way. This is pretty typical from practice to practice, and even the differences between, say, domestic construction and commercial construction. In commercial construction, sometimes they'll use what is known as the clear dimension, which is basically this dimension from in front of the door to just here. And sometimes they'll even include like the little door jamb. The reason for that is because this distance here is fixed. So if you're in a wheelchair, you can't open this door any further to get through. So the clear dimension is what's really important in commercial construction. Whether in residential, it's usually the door leaf. So we're going to offset this line here, and we're going to offset it 300 to get our door opening. Then we're going to allow 50 mil for our door frame either side. So this number actually increases by 100. So that will be a 920 offset from here to here. And then what we're going to do is we'll go the other way. We'll start on this side of the wall, and then we'll offset this line 1,000 this way, which then gives us the opening for this window. And then the window itself is dimensioned from opening to opening, so from here to here, and that dimension is 900. So let's go into AutoCAD and do that. So again, let's go from here. We'll start on the left-hand side of the wall, and I'll offset at 300. Notice that I don't care how long these lines are or that they're going through the whole drawing. It doesn't matter. We'll delete these in the not too distant future. I'll take this line, and now let's offset this 920, because remember it's 820 for the door leaf plus 250 mil sections for the frame. Hit enter. That's done. And again, let's click on this line while the command's still active, and I'm going to type in 1,000. Hit enter. Now that's 1,000 off of the right-hand side of the wall. And then we're going to click on this, offset, this time 900. That's for the window, and that's now done. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to select these 4 lines we just did, use move on my keyboard, and just bring that down to, I don't know, something like this. Okay, so you can see, maybe you can see, you got a wall, then an opening where the door will be, then some wall, then an opening where a window will be, then the wall before it turns around. Okay. And then next up, let's go back at the PDF and take a look at the other window. So this window here is relatively simple. It's centered to the width of the building. So in this instance, we just need to take one of these lines and offset it halfway. Or we could, actually no, that's probably the best way to do it. So let's go. And let's go, actually, you know what we could do? Let's do it a different way. Let's go copy. Actually, that won't work because we've got this line is longer than the building. Another way we can do it, I'll show you a couple of different ways we can work this out. So I might just draw a guideline from here to here. So from one end of the building to the other. And I might take another line, and that will bring up this center point. There it is there. And I'll draw one line this way. I'll then delete this guideline. So that's the center point of this building. And in fact, I might extend this all the way across because this might come in handy for us later. I'll make sure that's straight. Okay, and then let's go offset 450 up and then 450 down. I might grab these and I might just drag this line back to here. Okay, and then now this is the opening for our other window. All right, so we've now got enough guidelines. Ooh, those lines are not straight. I can see that's not straight. I'm just going to double check that these are right. So I'll draw another line. I'm going to draw another line just over the top of it. Click on that. Offset 450 up, 450 down. Okay, that's better. Sometimes it's hard to tell for sure, but sometimes you can just get the inkling on your screen that the lines are not straight. Okay, so that's the opening for our window on the left-hand side. So now let's actually draw the walls using the wall layer. So I'm going to go up to our layer selector, and I can just click on the drop-down box and then click on A wall 35. Now, a bit of a refresher from last week. A stands for architectural, dash wall, pretty self-explanatory, dash 35, which means it's a pen weight of 0.35. So I'm going to click on that, and now I'm going to use the polyline command. So PL, enter, or spacebar, and I'm just going to start from one corner and literally just trace over. Okay, so that's done. That's now our outer wall completed as one polyline. So when selected, it selects the whole wall. So we know that this is a 90 mil stud wall. So I'll just go offset 90 mil, enter, move my hand inside of the building, click, hit escape, done. That's our wall. That's our walls complete. However, we need to actually, put in some openings and then trim. So what I'll do is I'll use just the line command, and I'm just going to go from here to here. And notice how rough I'm being. Like, I'm drawing far beyond what the wall actually is. And this is sometimes a bit of a technique to make sure that you can see where you're drawing. Okay, so now they're there, we can turn the guides off. So let's go back to our layer properties manager. And I'm going to go to reference planes, which is down here, and then click the light bulb. And now they all turn off. Now, pretty easily, we're going to trim these openings so we just see the walls, because we don't want these lines going through those openings. So I'm going to go TR on my keyboard, trim, spacebar, and I'm going to click and move my hand to the left to make sure I select everything that even touches this green box. Click. Now that's selected. I'm going to hit spacebar again, and now it's going to ask me to start selecting the lines that I want to get rid of. So I want to get rid of these two lines. So I can click on them one by one, or the other way to do it is I can click and just click once, move my hand so it moves through those two lines, and click again, and now they're also removed. I can go the other way too. I can remove these lines, and I can remove these lines. Now you can see these lines are not being removed. There's like a little no smoking sign, and the reason for that is because I've already cut them this way. These lines become deselected, so we'll have to run the command again. Same here, and you can see the slight difference in colors when a line is selected, because it's got like a tinge of blue versus when they're not. I'm going to run through here. Okay, so when I'm done, I'll hit escape. I'll hit spacebar again to just run the same command, and I'll do the same thing again. I'll select everything, hit enter, and then start trimming away. And then hit escape a couple times, and that's our walls now complete. Now, each of these, because we've basically been splitting up and trimming polylines, these will then break. They won't be polylines anymore. So you'll see if I select the outside wall, that still is a polyline, but in anywhere where these lines are now, where they're being broken, they become individual lines. So this is one line, that's one line, that's one line, and this becomes pretty messy. So we can use a command called join to reconstruct these lines to be one continuous line, or each of these groups of lines to be continuous. So I'll select everything, type in join, hit enter. That's now complete. So when I select this, you can see all of that entire wall, those entire walls select, and same here, and same here. That's now complete. Let's now go and turn on our sketch lines again. So reference planes, I'll turn them back on. So there we go. And next up, let's do our overhead dash lines. So what they are, as I explained before, these dash lines here, they denote the roof above, because we can see that there's an eave on this roof. And even when we look at it in our front-on elevations, there's an eave here. So these lines here are denoted in plan as dash lines. Okay, So for that, we're going to go click on our layer dropdown and select A-13 architectural dash line pen weight 0.13. Click on that. And what we're actually going to do this time is we're going to be a little bit tricky. We're going to go polyline, enter, and I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm just going to draw over the walls like so. So I'm just tracing over the walls. Go around the whole building and then hit escape once we've completed the loop. Now what I'll do is I'll select that line, and it might be hard to select, it might not be, but if it is hard to select, the best thing to do is to again just turn off the reference planes, and you'll see very clearly those dashed lines over the opening. So I'm going to select the dashed lines, and I'm going to offset, and this time I'm going to offset 450. So I'll hit that, and I'll move my mouse outwards, and I still have the other dashed lines on the wall that we traced. So I'm going to click on that and delete that. So now that's our dash line there. There was one more dash line which denotes the ridge of the roof. So I'm just going to use my line command and go from here to here. Hit escape. That's now complete. So we now have our ridge dash lines. Don't be surprised if the dash lines don't appear dashed in your file. The reason for that, if you zoom in really close, you'll see those lines are indeed dashed. But because we're in model space, the dash lines will look different to when we're in paper space, when we're actually putting the drawings on a sheet. So don't worry about that for now. That's something we'll fix up a little bit later. Okay, so next up are windows and doors. And this is a relatively simple task, which you tackle one by one. And think about it as if you're actually building these elements like you're actually in construction, like you're working in construction. So we'll go to our layer dropdown, and I'm going to go to a window 18. So architectural window 0.18. So it's a slightly different line thickness. I'll click on that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a polyline. So PL for polyline, and I'm just going to go from here, 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 and finish that off. Hit escape. Then I'm going to do a line, and I'm going to hold my mouse at this endpoint, at that intersection, that corner, and move my hand very slightly to the right. And you can see there's like a tiny little green dash line that appears, and it says extension and then a number. I haven't actually drawn anything, but I'm moving my hand off of that corner, and I can type in like a start point for this next line because I am just drawing a single line now. So I'll type in 50 and hit enter. Now what that means is it's going to start 50 mil away from that point that I was hovering over before. So I'm going to draw down, hit escape, that's now complete. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mirror that to the other side. So what this is actually the window frame that we're cutting through. So this is the window itself, that's the window frame that we're slicing. So I'll click on this line, I'll type in mirror, hit enter, and hover my mouse over the center of the window, which will come up because we've got the midpoint of the actual window layer. So I'll click that, move my hand down, click. Do I want to erase the source object? No, I don't. So hit enter. And now we have a mirrored line from here to here for the two window frames. The last thing to do is to use just another line, and I'm going to go from the center point from here to the center point to there, and that denotes the glass. So we have the overall window opening from this purple line to that purple line. We then have this rectangle and this rectangle, which is the window frame, which has been sliced in plan. And then we have this line here, which is the glass being sliced in plan. Next up, we want to turn this into what is known as a block, which I went through in the principle or the key concepts within AutoCAD last week in the presentation. If you're unfamiliar or need a bit of a refresher, go back to that class and watch that portion of the presentation. So I'm going to select these lines here. Now I could go back through my layer properties and turn off walls. I could go in here and say turn off walls and then turn off reference planes, and now I'm just left with these window lines here. You can do that because we need to select them all to then turn them into a block. The other way we could do it is I'm going to keep those two layers on because maybe I just want to work faster. So you can see all these layers are on. I could go through and click on this line, then this line, then this line, and that line. That's another way to do it. Still too slow for me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my hand to the left-hand side of the window, click once and move my hand to the right so we get the blue selection box. Remember now that it will only select lines that are wholly within that box. And because those window lines are wholly within that box, once I click and to complete the selection, it's now just selected those window layers or those window lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through and define this as a block. So I'm going to type in block on my keyboard, and you can see it's the first command that comes up. Hit enter, and we get this window. So this window is saying, okay, name your block. So we will name our block as 900, or we'll call it window underscore 900 millimeter. So it's a 900 millimeter window, and maybe underscore plan. Next up is asking us to pick the base point. So when we define this block, it needs to have like a 0, 0 point. Similar to how when we started this project, we had a 0, 0 point at the corner of the building, the original origin. So we will have the origin of this block at one of the corners of these windows. So when we load in more blocks, our mouse will be hovered over that point of the block. I'll show an example once we're complete. So I'm going to click on pick point. So I'll click on that, and then I can then I'll click there. And once I click there, it then brings back up this block definition window, and you can see that it has like an XYZ coordinate. Once that's done, I will then just double check that where it says objects, that we want to turn these 4 objects, convert them into a block. So I'll click OK, and then it will ask me to select those objects again. So I'll click once here and move my hand to the right, click again, and then hit spacebar or enter, and now that's complete. So when I hover my mouse over that there, you can see it comes up with block reference on the Windows layer. So when I click on that, you see this little blue this little blue icon comes up. That allows me to move the block wherever I want. So as soon as I click on that, I can move the block from that base point. That's the base point we selected. So I can just slot that into position right there. What's really cool about that too is we can essentially just copy this block to the other area here where the other window is, because these 2 windows are exactly the same. So we can literally click on this and copy it across, or we can see it in the Insert tab. Under the Insert tab, there is the first button in the ribbon is called Insert, and you'll see that there's these blocks that are already defined. And then as you scroll down, you'll see window underscore 900 underscore plan. The reason why we have underscore plan is because we're going to draw this window in elevation as well. So we'll have window underscore 900 underscore elevation. So I'll click on that. And as soon as I click on that, notice how my mouse is sitting over that base point. That's the intersection point. So I'm going to actually click and place it right here at this window opening. And that does and that is incorrect at the moment, but what I'll do is I'll click on that block and I'll hit rotate, and I'll rotate from this point downwards. Hit escape, and we're now done. We've got our 2 windows in there correctly created as blocks on the window layer. All right, so finally the door. So same principle again. So I'm going to go to my drop down menu for layers. I'm going to go to door 18. Click on that, and let's go through that same process again. So I'm going to start with a polyline, PL, and we're going to start in the same corner right here. I'm going to draw up and then draw across 50 mil. Enter, down and across, and then hit escape. And now that's one frame, that's one door frame complete. Same deal again. This time we've got nothing to reference when going across, so I can just copy this. I might click on this and go copy, and I'll go from here to here, hit escape. Now both our door frames are done. Next up, let's go for the door leaf itself. So I'm going to use another polyline, enter. And now every door is slightly different, and just for simplicity's sake, let's start from the center of the door frame. So where that little triangle comes up, the midpoint, I'm going to click there and just move my hand straight up, and I'm going to type in 820 because remember the door leaf is 820. Hit enter, and then we're going to draw across, and let's draw across 35. We'll say it's a 35 mil thick door, pretty thin, but that's okay for residential. Come down again 820. and then complete the door leaf off, and then hit escape. So you see now we have two door frames and then the door leaf that's been swung open. All we're missing now is the arc that shows us the door radius. So the easiest way to do that is to use the circle tool. And we're going to start from the center line of the door, so where the door pivots from, which is again this location. And I'm just going to click and draw outwards to the other side of the door. And then I'll hit enter, I'll complete the command. Now, obviously that doesn't look correct, so what we'll do is we'll use the trim command. So TR for trim, spacebar, just select everything, who cares, hit enter, and now start deleting the door, the arc where it's not required. But zoom right in, because remember the apex of that circle is there. So if you zoom right in, you want to delete it from there, because you'll see now that this still exists, this component here, which is fine. And I'll come into here and I'll make sure I delete it right there. I'll hit escape a couple of times, and then it looks like I haven't really done anything, but you'll see I basically split that into two. So you've got that arc there and then this semicircle here, 3/4, and I'll just delete that. So now we're left with a perfectly drawn door, two door frames, the door leaf at 820, and then the door swing as well. Same deal, I'm going to click and drag from left to right to select the door and go block, hit enter, and now let's go 920, or actually first door underscore 820 millimeter underscore plan. So door underscore 820 millimeter underscore plan, because we will draw this door in elevation as well. Again, pick the point, and the point will be this corner. It generally is that corner that you pick. You generally choose what is known as the hinge side. So the latch side is where your door latch or where your door handle is, and then the door hinge side is obviously where your hinges are. Most of the time you set your doors out from that side, usually because it's the side that's backed onto a partition wall or something like that. So I'll click that corner, and then that all looks good. So I'll click OK, and then it's going to ask me to select the objects again. So I'll click once here, move my hand across, click, and then hit spacebar. The command's now complete. When I click on that arc, you see all the lines select. And when I move my mouse around, you can see I can drag that door wherever I'd like. So I'll move that back, Control Z, and that's now done. Okay. So that looks good. That is what we wanted to cover in today's class. And when I look at what we need to complete for next week, we have something pretty similar that I created previously. So that's where we want to get up to by the end of today's class. The dash lines, or sorry, the guidelines, the reference planes are still there, and that's intentional. We can keep them there indefinitely and then just turn them off. But you can see once we've turned them off, we've already completed the majority. Well, in fact, we completed basically all of the floor plan. So let me just select this and get rid of the annotations. So we've selected the main bulk of it. Next week, in next week's class, what we'll get onto is we'll draw the stairs, and then we'll look at how we transfer this drawing into a section. And a bit of a tip for you, this section marker here essentially means we're slicing the building right here, and we're looking at it in this direction. So this drawing directly informs us of how we're going to draw this. And then conversely, the section then informs us how to draw the elevations. So most of the time, in fact, I can't think of a single project I've worked on where the elevations inform the section. It's 99.9% of the time, it is the other way around. The section of the building inform the elevations, because the section, you really get to nut out what the construction method is, and how thick your structural members are, and what your roof detailing looks like and whatnot. And then the elevation essentially is just showing the cladding of the building. So that's what's that's all that we wanted to cover in this first lesson of the assessment task 1. So by next week, what we want to have covered is, ideally, we'd like you to come to class. I'd like you to come to class with something that looks like this. Again, remembering the reference planes are still there. I've just turned them off. And from here, we'll go forward into the section. If you have any questions or queries, definitely let me know and give me a call or email me. but I still will spend a little bit of time at the start of next week's class to ensure that everyone has been able to access this recording and is up to speed, and of course to answer any questions that you may have regarding this first tutorial.